Oh, Ayesha Curry. I am definitely probably going to piss some people off with my opinion about her, but here goes. So, as of recently, Ayesha Curry has gotten into a bit of hot water because she went on a popular podcast and made some comments about, never really desiring to be married or have children. And let me start off by saying that I really didn't have an issue with the comments that she made on the podcast. I think that it's completely her right to feel that, she didn't have a desire to get married or have children. That's completely fine. But what I have found is that a lot of people, particularly women, are coming to her defense and saying, oh, men just hate Ayesha Curry, and they twist around everything that she says just because she isn't just thrilled beyond belief to be married to Steph Curry, and she's just not always talking about how grateful she is to be married to Steph Curry, and really the hate that men have toward Ayesha is just rooted in misogyny. And I don't really argue any of that. But what I do argue against is women who are saying things like, oh, if Ayesha would have just had a hoe phase, she would feel differently about marriage, but because she was deprived of her hoe phase, that's why she feels the way that she does about marriage and children. Or, oh, if people would just give Ayesha credit for what she's accomplished, then she wouldn't feel the way that she does and wouldn't say things like she wished that she got some of the attention from men that Steph gets from women. And what I'm going to push back and say is that I don't think any of those are the reasons why Ayesha Curry says the things that she says and does the things that she does. I think that Ayesha Curry is simply a woman who allows comparison to steal her joy. That she is a woman who is probably used to being the center of attention, and whenever she is not the center of attention or the person getting the most attention in the room, she has an issue with it. That's what I think about Ayesha Curry, and here's why. See, I started following Ayesha Curry, or at least just paying attention to her, back in 2015 because I'm a real NBA fan. And when Steph Curry and the Warriors started making NBA finals, they got on my radar. And Ayesha Curry and Steph Curry got on my radar. And at first I thought Ayesha Curry and Steph Curry, like, oh, they're so cute. And even the fact that they were, openly devout Christians, that made them more appealing to me because I'm a woman of faith. And so I started paying attention to Steph and Ayesha. I started following them. I thought that the little videos they'd done about their relationship were super, super cute. And then I came across an article where Ayesha, and I'm just going to kind of list out some examples that help to bolster my claim that I think Ayesha is just somebody who must be the center of attention, and when she's not, she lashes out. So I first began to think this when I saw an article that Ayesha did about being a mixed race woman, and she talked about how she didn't feel fully embraced by the black community, and that bothered her. My thing is, and the problem that I have with that article is that she didn't really have the same smoke for other communities. So it's like she felt entitled to the acceptance of the black community, but didn't necessarily feel entitled to that same acceptance from the other racial communities that make up her heritage. So that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Like, why do you feel so entitled to black acceptance, but not entitled to white or Asian acceptance? These are other racial groups that make up your heritage, but why are you only calling out black people? And then I questioned, what did you want from black people, Ayesha? Did you want black people as a whole to throw a party and say, welcome to the community, Ayesha. We're so glad to have you. Thank you for being mixed race. What were you expecting from black people, Ayesha? Because for me, as a monoracial woman, I never got a party thrown for me. I never felt like, oh, people came out and they overwhelmingly accepted me and made their acceptance known. So it's like, what were you even expecting from black people? What did you want black people to do to demonstrate that they had fully embraced and accepted you? But to me, that was the first evidence that when Ayesha is not kind of like pedestalized or highly celebrated or doesn't get the attention or embracing that she feels she deserves, she'll begin to kind of lash out, right? She'll pout about it a little bit. Then the next thing that caught my attention that made me think, Ayesha really likes to be centered and has a problem when she's not centered or not the center of attention or not getting the most attention, was when she called out women who had the confidence to, dress maybe a little more revealing than she had the confidence to do. Everybody remembers these comments. I think they were in like 2017, maybe 2018, where she said something along the lines of like, oh, I guess it's in and trendy to wear revealing clothing, but I'm a woman who likes to keep things a bit mysterious and, be modest and discreet. And the thing is, I don't have a problem with women who, want to promote modest dressing. I consider myself a woman who dresses pretty modestly. And if Ayesha was sincere in saying this, I would have no problem with what she said. But come to find out, I don't think Ayesha was that sincere when she talked about, she's the kind of woman that likes to keep things a mystery for her man. And, she kind of in a judgmental tone was throwing jabs at women who are maybe IG models who wear more revealing clothing. If Ayesha genuinely felt that way, it wouldn't be a problem. But later we found out that at that time, Ayesha was carrying extra baby weight. I think she admitted to having a botched boob job. And as a result, she probably wasn't feeling secure and confident to show her body in the way that she was seeing some of the IG models that she was speaking out against. But what we later found out is that when Ayesha got in shape, lost some of the baby weight, maybe corrected the botched surgery that she had, we then saw Ayesha in pictures with bikinis on. She was showing just as much skin as the other women that she was kind of criticizing. And so it came across like, Ayesha, you weren't just promoting modesty, you were actually hating and you were jealous because you wanted the attention that these more confident women were getting, but you weren't secure enough to show your body because of the baby weight, because of the surgery perhaps. That's what was going on. And to me, that's always going to be lame when a woman hates on another woman because she's insecure or lacks the confidence of that woman. And she does it under the guise of, I'm modest and I'm keeping something reserved for my man. Were you? Because we've now seen the bikini pictures. So which one was it, Ayesha? So that also had me side-eyeing Ayesha and caused me to think, I think this woman just has an issue when she's not the center of attention. The next thing that caught my attention was back in 2016, during the 2016 NBA Finals. Ayesha Curry, her husband, Steph Curry, he was having a bad finals, and Ayesha tweeted, the NBA is rigged, because she didn't like the calls that her husband was getting. And then when she received a lot of backlash, because people were rightfully calling her out and saying, really, Ayesha, the NBA is rigged? Like, the NBA, this entity that has made your family very wealthy, the NBA is rigged? The NBA that voted your husband a unanimous MVP, it's rigged now against your husband? When people started calling her out and basically saying, like, you're a sore loser, Ayesha, what are you talking about? She then said, and I may not quote her exactly, but it was something along the lines of, I just sent out that tweet because I was just having a bad day because, my father, as he was walking around, I guess behind the arena where the players were during the NBA Finals, the police stopped him and asked him to show ID, and, she was kind of playing this racial profiling card. Which, to be clear, police engaging in racial profiling is very real, and so I'm not trying to minimize that. But the problem that I had with it was that, one, the 2016 NBA Finals were probably one of the most highly attended NBA Finals in history. It was LeBron James versus Steph Curry. It was huge, right? It was a 7-game series. It was absolutely huge. And so security was probably extremely tight. And so your father, Ayesha, being asked to produce ID because he's walking around in areas that are restricted, that should be expected. Like, nobody knows what your father looks like. He should be asked to produce ID. So even for you to be annoyed by that seemed weird. But even more so, it just seemed like, I feel like you're playing this card because you know the atmosphere and the climate at the time, and you're trying to get some heat off of you. And I thought that was really whack. That, like, instead of just owning it and saying, hey, things weren't going my way, my husband's team was losing, and so I just kind of lashed out and said the NBA was rigged. Instead of just kind of owning your immature action, you wanted to play this like police profiling card. And what was also bothersome about that was that at the time, I know that her and Steph have been more vocal about police brutality since then, but at the time there were some instances of police unarmed, or the police basically engaging in the killing of unarmed black people in the area in which she lived. Sorry, it took a while to get that out. Couldn't quite get it off my tongue. But anyways, there had been situations where, police brutality had occurred in the area that her and Steph lived, and she had remained silent. So it was particularly off-putting that the time that you choose to speak out about police misconduct is when your father supposedly was being asked to show ID as he was roaming behind the NBA Finals, but you didn't do it when people were experiencing police misconduct and abuse in your own community. So even that whole situation was like, okay, Ayesha, just own it. You are a sore loser. So that bothered me. And then we all know about when she was on the red table and she made comments about desiring or feeling some type of way that she doesn't get the same level of attention from men that Steph Curry gets, and how sometimes, it would be nice if she got that attention. We all know what she said there. Those comments received a lot of scrutiny. And really, I think the thing is that whenever Ayesha is not the one getting the most attention and she's not the center of attention, she feels some type of way and she lashes out. So if she's not being fully embraced and put on a pedestal by the black community, then she's going to lash out in an Essence magazine article and say, the black community never fully accepted me. Well, what do you mean, Ayesha? Like, I'm sorry, I didn't attend any meetings where the black community decided that they were going to reject you. So what type of embrace were you expecting to get? They treated you probably like they do every other black person. Like you're just a regular smuggler human being. What were you expecting? When Ayesha is calling out other women for the way that they dress, but then she dresses the same exact way when she starts to feel more confident about her body. It's like, well, Ayesha, were you just mad that you weren't getting that attention at the time? When Ayesha tweets about the NBA being rigged because, her husband isn't winning, and so the NBA must be rigged, even though the NBA has actually been really good to Steph Curry. And they voted him the only to date unanimous MVP. So it just repeatedly showed me that, okay, when Ayesha doesn't get her way, when Ayesha is not the center of attention, Ayesha's going to lash out. And I think that that's the real issue with Ayesha Curry and what causes her to just come across as being insufferable to some people. Now, let me be clear. I think that two things can be true at the same time. I think that there are a segment of the male population who just hates Ayesha Curry because she is not grateful enough to be married to the great Steph Curry, and they want her to just be quiet, be seen and not heard. I don't argue that. There are misogynist men who 100% probably feel that way. But then there are people like myself who have actually paid attention and followed Ayesha Curry pretty closely, and they have seen what she said, and they kind of have concluded that, you know, Ayesha, you're a very accomplished woman, and if you just focused on your accomplishments and accolades and really celebrated those, you'd be a lot happier. But because you compare the attention that others get to the attention that you feel that you're not getting, that is actually what steals your joy. And the last thing that I'll say about Ayesha and Steph Curry, and I don't like to say this typically, like, I usually don't like to say, well, if a man did this or if a woman did that, then it would be perceived differently. I don't usually like to say that because I realize that there are nuances when it comes to gender, and that there are things that men will do that will be perceived much differently than women. But what I will say when it comes to Ayesha Curry is that people who are sympathizing and empathizing with her and saying, oh, it must be so hard to be married to Steph Curry and he gets all this attention and she just wants to be acknowledged for her accolades and accomplishments, I'll just say that if, let's say, the husband of Kamala Harris or the spouse of another highly accomplished woman was saying something like that, we would easily call it out and say, hey, how about you stop comparing and competing for attention with your spouse and just celebrate your spouse? You know, like if Serena Williams' husband came out and said, I'm tired that when I'm on the red carpet, they ask me to step away so they can take pictures of Serena. I'm an accomplished businessman. People would look at him and be like, yeah, you are an accomplished businessman, but your wife is one of the greatest athletes of all time. So good for you, but chill out. And why can't you just celebrate your wife? Why do you have to center yourself? Well, I'm going to say the same thing with Ayesha Curry. Like, you're accomplished. You have, I think, an online magazine. You run a successful restaurant. You still do some modeling. You have some brand deals. Why not just delight in that and celebrate your spouse? Why can't you and Steph just celebrate each other and not worry about who's getting more attention from who? Because Steph never talks about the attention that you get from, like, the makeup brand deals that you've gotten or how successful your restaurant is. He never feels threatened by that. So why do you come across as feeling threatened by the attention he gets from his success? It's weird. And I feel like if a man was doing it, we could easily spot it and call it out as, you're somebody who feels that you always have to be centered. Cut it out. So that's my unpopular opinion about Ayesha Curry. I don't think that she'd feel differently about marriage or children or anything else if she, had a whole phase. I don't think that all the pushback that she receives is just from misogynistic men, although I think some of it is definitely from misogynistic men. I think Ayesha Curry's problem ultimately is she allows comparison to be the thief of her joy, and she is somebody that when she is not the center of attention, when she's not the person getting the most attention, she has an issue with it. It's like an old friend of mine once said, and I call her an old friend because we've actually been friends for a very long time, but she's a very attractive woman. And what she let slip out one time was that, she said, I hate when I go into the room and I'm not the prettiest girl in the room. And at the time, I just kind of looked at her like, okay, like, who really even thinks like that? But I think Ayesha Curry is one of those women who, when she is not the focal point, it bothers her. And I think that's her issue. And I think that that's why people who aren't just blatant misogynists have an issue with her and find her to be a bit insufferable at times. That's my unpopular opinion. Drop down in the comments if you feel differently or have a different opinion.